Welcome back, it's Nine, and today I have another big video for you guys. We are going to be talking about an unannounced project from Naughty Dog, and we are also going to be talking about KillZone as a series and what's going on. Are we going to see another one? What's happening, as there has been some new news and updates about it. Now, before we get into that, if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to get notified about all my upcoming videos, and hit the like button. It helps the channel a ton. Now, let's get right into it, starting with this article that comes from twistedvoxel.com. This article is titled, Naughty Dog reportedly started working on an unannounced project in 2020. So hints for this new project come from LinkedIn profiles of various Naughty Dog employees. Vineet Agarwal and Richard Cambier, both lead game designers at Naughty Dog, were promoted to the role of co-game director and game director respectively. Of course, there were a bunch of other promotions that happened within the company, but these two are specifically what we're looking at. So Vineet and Richard were promoted to their new role back in September 2020, and this appears to line in with Naughty Dog commencing work on a new unannounced project. Robert Krekel, an audio director at Naughty Dog, mentions working on an unannounced project back in August 2020 as well. As you guys remember, and we discussed it back in December, the developer had a huge recruitment drive for multiple positions that are still open for their studio. LinkedIn lists more than 400 developers that are currently working at Naughty Dog, so they have more than enough developers to form multiple teams and start working on different projects. Now, of course, we know that there's some sort of multiplayer that's happening for The Last of Us Part 2, still doesn't have a release date, and we also can assume that there might be some sort of upgrade for the PS5, given that it came out so late in its life cycle, and of course that we're waiting for this multiplayer portion, so it wouldn't be surprising if they released a PS5 edition only of The Last of Us Part 2 to take advantage of the hardware. Now, there could also be a different project outside of those two, as we know that creating the factions multiplayer has probably been in production for quite a while, and they focused directly on that for quite some time now. And of course, it's not going to take as many resources to create this PS5 definitive edition, if that is even happening. And that still leaves us with this new unannounced project that we see from multiple LinkedIn profiles and multiple announcements from different people within Naughty Dog. So it's hard to know exactly what project we're looking at, right? There's really no hint towards what it could be. We know that The Last of Us is getting a TV show. We know that The Last of Us 2 won a lot of awards, and we did hear Neil Druckmann talk about possibly revisiting The Last of Us. It ended on a cliffhanger. It didn't give us a definitive ending, of course, but I don't imagine that they're going to go straight back to that. I'd actually love to see them do a new IP if possible, but of course that takes a lot of resources, that takes a lot of effort to create a whole new IP than to just revisit The Last of Us and finish it off with a part 3, if that is indeed what they plan to do. Now, based on history, we've seen Naughty Dog do mostly entries of 3, but I guess with Uncharted being a number 4, that could very well change. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, this is a lot of speculation, but the facts are there that they are working on an unannounced project. This has started. Whether it is The Last of Us, we still are unsure about that, and I'm sure we'll get more news as time goes on, but I did want to point that out as I did catch this article, and it seemed really intriguing based on it being that Naughty Dog is basically Sony's AAA studio, their #1 studio within their entire portfolio of studios. Now, on to our next topic, and this is a bit of a sad one for you guys. I know a lot of you guys are KillZone fans. You know, we haven't seen a KillZone in a long time, and we're going to talk about it. So this comes from VideoGamesChronicle.com, and it's titled, PlayStation has officially retired the KillZone franchise website. So a notice on KillZone.com has announced that going forward, visitors to KillZone.com will be directed to PlayStation.com, but no clarification is offered on what it means for the future of the Guerrilla Games series. So the notice reads, KillZone.com has retired. Dear KillZone.com visitor, the official website for the KillZone franchise has retired. Going forward, visitors to KillZone.com will be directed to PlayStation.com. While this change doesn't affect the online multiplayer modes, player statistics, or ranking data for KillZone Mercenary and KillZone Shadowfall, it is now no longer possible to create or manage clans in KillZone Shadowfall. We apologize for this inconvenience. Thank you to KillZone.com's many fans and visitors throughout the years for their enthusiasm and support. Sincerely, Guerrilla. So if you're not aware of KillZone's history, this was one of PlayStation's flagship franchises. You know, it was touted as a competition or a competitor for the Halo franchise. Now, 6 installments released across PlayStation 2, 3, 4, and handheld consoles in the 9 years following its 2004 debut. However, this series hasn't seen a release since 2013 with KillZone Shadowfall. Now, of course, that is really telling, right? Like, that's a long time to not see a release for a KillZone game, something that is a flagship title. And this is all bad news, I would say, for the KillZone series. You know, a website shutting down. Obviously, it could very well just be that they're decreasing support for their previous games, but I find it odd that they would close off a website if they still intended to continue to make releases in that franchise. Obviously, this doesn't mean that there's no chance that they're ever revisiting it. That's not the case at all. They very well could, but I think they're probably going to go on a hiatus. Now, interestingly enough, asked in 2017 about the future of KillZone franchise, then Guerrilla boss Herman Hulst, which is now the PlayStation head of Worldwide Studios, gave the Academy of Interactive Arts and Science a non-committal answer. He said, "I get asked that question about the future of KillZone a lot through Twitter and other social media accounts. It's really heartwarming to hear that there's such a strong appetite from the loyal KillZone fan base. It's a franchise and universe that we still love with a passion at Guerrilla." He says it hasn't been easy doing something so completely different. Whether or not we put a permanent period behind the series, it's too early to make announcements on that. All I can say is that we've always loved the KillZone universe and the KillZone series, and we still do. We share that passion for the game with a lot of our fans. So really, he doesn't say, hey, this is the end of it. And he also doesn't say, hey, we're going to continue making games. So he's no longer the head of Guerrilla. He is now the head of Worldwide Studios. So he does have an influence, technically speaking, but it also has to make sense for PlayStation as a whole. If we look at the review scores for KillZone Shadowfall, it scored a 73 on Metacritic. Then we got to look at the sales. So we know that it didn't review too well, considering that it was getting in the 90s with initial entries, especially KillZone 2. It sold 2.1 million copies as of March 2014, and this released in November of 2013. So we know it sold more than 2.1 million copies, but obviously there's no official source or official report from Sony. So it would basically be VG charts, which I know how some of you feel about that. So we're not even going to go there. Instead, we're going to say, okay, in about a year and a bit, they sold 2.1 million copies, and that's really saying something. But within the first, I would say, month and a half, they sold about 800,000 copies. I know the argument is going to be that the PlayStation didn't have as many units out there at that time, so that could be a part of, and it is a part of, why it didn't sell as many copies. But we got to remember that it clearly isn't selling that well because they didn't even bother revisiting this. Now, I want to compare it side by side with Horizon Zero Dawn. And again, I understand that the PS4 had many, many more units out there at the time. Horizon sold more than 10 million copies, and it won many, many awards. And on top of that, it was the best-selling PlayStation 4 game at the time. And obviously, that's changed with like Spider-Man, God of War, The Last of Us Part 2. But at the time, as a new IP, to do that well, and that's another thing that I want to point out, is that it was a brand new IP versus KillZone, which had a great foundation, had a fan base, you know, and it was almost one of those games that you knew what you were getting when you were jumping into, whereas Horizon Zero Dawn was a totally new experience. It was a type of game that Guerrilla had never done, so it was more of a risk, and as a consumer, it was more of a risk for you to jump in as well, but it ended up paying off massively. And that brings me to the Metacritic scores of Horizon Zero Dawn, which is 89. And 89 is an amazing score, short of 90, and you got to think about that. They had great sales, won a lot of awards. It was a new IP. It was one of the PS4's best-selling games at the time. It makes a big difference, and it makes Sony look at it in a way like, do we keep investing money into this franchise, or do we switch back to KillZone, which didn't have the greatest last entry, and it didn't sell the greatest either? So it just comes down to what makes more sense, which I believe for them, it makes more sense to do Horizon Part 2 and then Part 3, as we know that they do plan on doing a trilogy. Now, there is rumors and speculation about Guerrilla working on a second game. Now, this game is not Horizon, and this could very well be KillZone, because they've technically never announced that they aren't going to do a KillZone game, or it could be another new IP, as they had so much success with Horizon Zero Dawn. I do want to point out as well, on top of them taking down the website, Sony does not really mention KillZone, not even on their official website. They talk about Guerrilla, but they do not mention KillZone. They talk about Horizon. And if you look at Naughty Dog, they talk about Uncharted. They talk about The Last of Us. If you look at Sucker Punch, they talk about Infamous. They talk about Ghost of Tsushima. So they oddly omit talking about KillZone, and it makes me believe that that's truly another sign, and we talked about this in a previous video, that they don't intend to revisit KillZone anytime soon. Now, obviously, until they sell off this IP, if they ever do, it will always be an option for them to revisit, but I think maybe taking a hiatus with that IP would probably work out best, as when they come back to revisit it, they could make a killing by just rebooting it completely, and by then, it'll be a fresh experience, right? Now, I know, and I understand that there are a lot of KillZone fans out there, and by no means am I saying KillZone isn't a good franchise, not a good IP. It's a fantastic IP. It clearly has a great following, but when you compare it to the success of Horizon, it only makes sense for Guerrilla to invest more of their resources into Horizon and not revisit KillZone, which did not do that well for them. But again, as I said, this is speculation based on the information that's been given to us. So really, based on Sony's words, they have not canceled KillZone. They have not said they're never making another KillZone game. So for all we know, Guerrilla's other game that they're working on, or rumored other game, could be a KillZone game, and they're just trying to be very on the down low about it so they can surprise people. So that's all I have for you guys for today, and I'm going to pass this on to you guys. I'm very curious what you guys are going to make of these Naughty Dog postings for an unannounced project in 2020, and I also would love to hear what you guys think of KillZone's website being taken down and what this could mean for the future of KillZone. Do you think that we're going to get another KillZone game anytime soon? Do you think that this could be the game that they're working on the side that they're secretly not talking about? I'd love to hear about it from you guys. Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to get notified about all my upcoming videos, and hit the like button. It helps the channel a ton. You can follow me on Twitter and Twitch. Links will be in the description. And share this video with a friend. I will talk to you all on the next one. Take care.